As a follow-up to a video I made where I replaced the heater block, I used some thread tape in order to avoid the guide getting stuck to the threads here in melted plastic. As you can see, it still threads in completely fine, even though there was leakage out the bottom of the nozzle. You can see right here that it leaked out and even flooded around here. The threads, however, were clean up to the point where the guide sat. Using a tap, I was able to clean out the rest of the plastic that was stuck. So is it worth it? I'd say if you have thread sealant, then go ahead and use it. The thread sealant cost me around $10. 3 sets of heater blocks cost me the same amount. The amount of thread tape wasn't all that much that I used. There was still some leakage up the top, but not as much as the bottom. Again, it flooded up to around here. The thread tape did a pretty good job at saving the threads. If you have it, I recommend using it. If you don't worry about getting it. The heater cores will cost you around the same. The power supply to my Ender 3 started producing an electronic smell. After opening it up, I found this bad component. This is a thermoresistor that is used to limit the current, and as current goes through the resistor, it heats up. As the thermoresistor heats up, it allows more current to flow through it. The power supply uses this to limit the inrush current when you're initially heating up the extruder and the bed, since it takes a lot of energy. You can see the old one got too hot and cracked the ceramic, emitting electronic smell. Despite being cracked, it still continued to function, but there was still the electronic smell that would just flood the room. Make sure your power supply is discharged by making sure that it's off when you take everything apart. If you disconnect the connector over here and you switch the power on, power supply will be charged. And so even if you take off the AC cord, it will still hold the charge. You can see right there that the LED light is still on. Over time, the power supply will discharge on its own. If you want to discharge it faster, make sure it's off. Connect the connectors and then flip it on. This will ensure that the charge is taken out from the power supply and out into the printer. If you don't feel comfortable opening up the power supply, then just buy a new one and connect it up. Connecting the new power supply is pretty simple because they usually use the same markings, such as neutral, live, ground, voltage negative, and voltage positive. These thermal resistors cost me around $8, and the whole power supply itself, the Meanwhile upgrade, cost me about $35. Honestly, it was better to just upgrade. The new Meanwhile seems to be more power efficient since it doesn't heat up as fast as the old one. As you can see, the fan isn't even spinning, and when it's heating up, it also doesn't spin. Unlike the old power supply where I would turn it on and just start spinning anyway. Even though it does say it has an on or off control circuit, but I've never seen the fan actually turn off in here. The fan pulls in air instead of blow out air, so it makes it quieter. And now you can see idling, it's pretty quiet except for the extruder fan that's always on. A good way to put in the new component is by using some wick, and you heat up the solder onto the wick. The wick will pick up all the solder and reveal the holes. So now that the holes are cleaned, I can just poke these on through. I'm gonna lower it just a bit, let it stand around there, flip it back over, and add solder. Now that it's all soldered up, I turned off the soldering iron. Now I'm just clipping off the tail ends. And it's ready to be powered up again. In order to put everything back, set it at an angle and then drop it down. I put down the heat spreaders. I'm going to leave the heat spreaders a little bit loose before screwing the main board. The board screws are the ones that are rounded on the top. Once all 4 screws are in, I'm tying them down. After that, I'm going to tie down the heat spreader. I'm going to start with the 2 screws on each end. I'm just screwing them into place and not tying them down yet. Once both are in place, I'm tying them down. And finally, I'm tying down the middle piece while holding down the back nut. After that one's done, I'm going to focus on the top spreader. And just like before, use the same method. Now that the board is in, I'm going to put the fan back on. Position it into place, pop it down. Finally putting in all the screws. So now that everything's back in place, I'm going to connect the leads, connect the power strip, and turn everything on. I'm going to preheat to ABS and see if it continues to smell. If I put my nose up to the fan, there is a lingering smell of electronic smoke, but it doesn't fill up the whole room. So now I have a 24-volt power supply. I don't really have a use for it. It's a good backup in case this one fails on me. If you have any questions, please let me know. And as always, thank you for watching.